Well, that was fun, and we'll keep the fun going. How about that? All right. So, I need to tell you about one of my siblings. I won't tell you which one, but one of my siblings growing up had a gullibility issue. Just seemed to believe anything and everything that people would tell them. And it used to drive me crazy how much they would believe just wild and random things. And I remember it got really bad with some neighbor kids that we had in the neighborhood, Hunter and Connor. Oh, Hunter and Connor would tell the wildest stories, and this sibling of mine would just take it in, and then tell me the crazy things that Hunter and Connor told them. And I just have a strong impulse to correct people when they say something crazy, and so with other people I hold back, but with my sibling I did not. And I remember it got so bad where Hunter and Connor had convinced them that they had superpowers. Totally, fully convinced, and come home like, David, they really can. They can do all this stuff. And I saw Hunter turn invisible. And I was like, no, you didn't. You did not see Hunter turn invisible. They don't have superpowers, okay? They don't. Like, no, they really do. And so it was a lot of things like that, where it was like, they would just take something in, especially Hunter and Connor. They abused their influence and got them to believe all sorts of things. But I remember also that my sibling, who loved animals and animal facts, would tell us just like really random animal facts. And some of them just sounded really crazy. And because their credibility and my faith in their level of discernment was so low, I was like, there's no way that's true. And there were so many times where they would share an animal fact, and I'd say, that's crazy. There's no way rabbits have that many babies. There's no way. And then yeah, it's true, yeah, you work with rabbits. And then I'd look it up on Google, and sure enough, I would be wrong. It can be really difficult sometimes to discern the truth, and especially when we're young, our brains are developing, we don't have a lot of life experience to compare to, like what's crazy, like having superpowers or not. But even as we get older, I really think it doesn't get all that much easier. In a lot of ways, actually, things get more complex about determining what is true, what to believe, what do you give credit to and credibility to. It becomes harder and harder. And in this world now with, internet, AI, all of the above, it will not get easier. In fact, it will become harder and harder and harder. So just remember the wise words that Abraham Lincoln once said, don't believe everything you read on the internet. So, not original to me. But discerning what is true. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves. We like to think that as very rational beings, we can very objectively discern fact from fiction, true and not true. The reality is, the way humans work, how we are wired, truth is much more relational and personal than what we think. The things we come to believe and give the most weight to and value and believe to be true, a lot of it is impacted by the people around us, who we give credibility to. Maybe the Hunter and Connors of our life, or others, maybe ones who are more credible. Truth is highly relational and personal. As we're continuing in through our series through the Gospel of John, we're at a point in Jesus' life. It's leading to a climax. Last week we talked about his arrest, and now we get the last extended conversation that Jesus has before his crucifixion, and it's with a guy named Pontius Pilate, who's the Roman governor at the time. And Pilate, just like us, has a really tough time where he's wrestling with truth, with who to believe, what to believe. And there's this discernment that he has to go through. And I think in leaning into what Pilate wrestles with, we can learn a lot about discerning truth in our own lives. So we're going to pick up where we left off in John 18 with verse 28. It says this, "Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, 'What charges are you bringing against this man?' 'If he were not a criminal,' they replied, 'we would not have handed him over to you.' Pilate said, 'Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law.' 'But we have no right to execute anyone,' they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' 'Is that your own idea?' Jesus asked. 'Or did others talk to you about me?' 'Am I a Jew?' Pilate replied. 'Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?' Jesus said, 'My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders, but now my kingdom is from another place.' 'You are a king then,' said Pilate. Jesus answered, 'You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me.' 'What is truth?' retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, 'I find no basis for a charge against him.'" Pontius Pilate. We know some details about his life just from other sources that we can gather. He was most likely either a career politician or worked his way up through the military to get to this post as the Roman governor of Judea. And Judea was not a major region to be a governor. I mean, he had risen to a pretty high place in the politics of the Roman Empire, but he still governed a pretty small slice. There's a picture of a map here that'll show, oh, maybe not. Maybe it's not on there. There it is. This is the Roman Empire at the time, and that little red spot is Judea, the place where Pontius Pilate was the governor of, and he governed that particular area. Judea was not like the big spot in the Roman Empire by any means, but it did serve a pretty important, basically trade lines, because Egypt was the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. To feed the crowded streets of Rome, they relied on Egypt for grain, for corn. And so if Judea is in revolt or tension, or the Romans don't have full control over the trade routes that go through there, then the Caesars get really mad at whoever's in charge of that area because they need that place. So Pilate, I explain all that just so you know the pressure, the background pressure that Pilate has on his plate. His whole aim, his goal, his commission from the Caesars of Rome is keep Judea under control. Because Judea had a fierce independent streak. They were like always revolting, uprising, and whoever's in charge there constantly had to put down revolts. And so that was Pilate's goal. And the way Pilate did it, just from other accounts we can read, is he tried to control primarily by fear. There's a lot of accounts of Pilate and just like pretty brutally oppressing or putting down any kind of threats to Rome. That was, he was quick to do that. And he often found himself in tension with the religious leaders of Jerusalem. It was this fight for control. Just he wanted people to know who was boss and just tamp down on any potential revolts that might crop up. And so in the midst of all of that, we have this decision point that Pilate is forced to address, to consider in his own mind, who does he believe to be true? What things are more valuable or important to him in his life when Jesus walks in on the scene? And as he's determining truth, and we dive into Pilate and continue on in the story, I want us to think about an illustration here. I think this is kind of helps illustrate the way that truth works in our life as people, as we're trying to discern what is true, especially when there's competing truths at work. I think truth is kind of like a trampoline, okay? Stay with me on this. A trampoline. That's not me up there, but it looks fun. I wish I was with them right now. Truth like a trampoline. When you're on a trampoline, especially with multiple people, if you've ever been on a trampoline jumping around, there's a lot of people on there with you. You know that whoever has the most weight has the greatest impact on the trampoline. If even if you're just standing there, people kind of fall into their orbit just because they're causing the most weight. And maybe the person who can jump the highest and push it down far enough, they're going to be double bouncing people. It was my dream growing up to have a trampoline in our backyard. Every birthday, every Christmas, Mom, Dad, please, is this the year where we can get a trampoline? And every year is, no, you'll break your arm. It's not the no, you'll shoot your eye out. It was no, you'll break your arm. Every year I still ask. I was just holding out. Can you believe this? I'm not resentful about this at all. But, yes, Lord. But my senior year of high school, for Christmas, my parents were like, trampoline! And I was like, seriously? Now? This is a cruel joke. But you know what? I had an awesome half a year enjoying that trampoline before I went off to college. It was a good 6 months. It was a really good 6 months. But I had cousins growing up who had a trampoline. They lived in Arizona. I had to drive 6 hours from where we grew up to get there. But anyways, in Arizona, we would at least once a year go and visit them, and we would spend the whole week on that trampoline. And it wasn't one of those trampolines that have the nets, which is very safe. That's good, whatever. But it's so much more fun when you don't have the nets. And we had a lot of fun playing dodgeball. And so what you'd do is you'd have one person on one side of the trampoline that would have a dodgeball. Everyone else on the trampoline except a second person on the other side of the trampoline with the dodgeball. And the whole goal is to try and hit the people on the trampoline. If you hit them, then you switch out. It's a really fun game. You should play it sometime. But there is nothing scarier than when you get double bounced by especially the biggest person on the trampoline. When you get double bounced by them. Do you know what I mean by double bounce? Trampoline goes down, and it's going down, and then you falling down, and right as it's lifting up, you hit, and then you get launched, okay? And when you get launched like that, and you go flying, and you're playing dodgeball, when you're up way up in the air, like your trajectory is set. There's very little you can do to contort your body to dodge, right? And so there's this terrifying, helpless feeling when you're launched 15 feet up in the air, and you see the person who's practiced baseball their whole life wind up and throw that ball at you, and you're just like, maybe in midair nope, there's no chance, and you just get hit. It's so much fun. Anyways, that's really a tangent. I'm going to try and stay focused. Trampolines. The person with the greatest weight can have the greatest impact. I think truth is like that. There are so many competing truths in our life, in our daily life, big decisions and small decisions that we're constantly weighing. And whatever we give the most weight to has the greatest impact in our life and ultimately helps us determine our decisions, what we decide, what we believe to be the greatest truth. Even this morning, the very second I woke up, my alarm was going off. I had told Megan just the night before, I've got a lot to do in the morning. I'm kind of behind in my week. We had a wedding the other day before, blah, blah, blah. I need to wake up early. Set my alarm. Alarm goes off. Hit snooze. And then begins immediately the discernment process, and I feel the different weights of truths in my life, and I'm laying in bed thinking about them. Truth number one, I've got a lot to do. I need to wake up early this morning. Truth number two, I am so tired. I really like this bed. This bed's really comfortable. It's nice to stay in this bed. This is a truth. That truth at that moment in my life was having the greatest weight. It was pressing furthest down on that trampoline for me. Truth number three, Craig Groeschel, who's the pastor of Life Church, has the 8 habits of successful leaders or something like that. And one of them, he says, never snooze your alarm. I was like, sorry, Craig, I'm letting you down this morning. Truth number 4, about the second time I snoozed my alarm, Megan got up and went to the bathroom, started taking a shower. And I was just thinking, if I'm still in bed, when she comes out, she's going to be like, didn't you have to get up early? Accountability. Truth number 4, 1 out. I was like, I don't have to explain myself to Megan. I'm just going to get up and go. And I got out of bed and turned my alarm clock off. But I'm telling you, the small decisions and the big ones, like Pilate faces, which arguably Pilate's decision on how he handles this, that's how history remembers Pontius Pilate. The big decisions and small decisions are determined by what we give the most weight to, the who, the what we give most credibility in our life, determine truth and therefore our decisions. Pilate is a story of competing truth. He has in his head on his trampoline Caesar, who he knows he's got to stay good friends with Caesar, because if not, when you're not good friends with Caesar and you're a governor, like you're gone. He's got Caesar in the back of his head. The high priest, who he knows he's been having tension with over and over and over. If he pushes them too far, they're going to go into revolt. How far can I push them? This isn't in John's gospel, but in Luke's gospel, we hear that his wife, Pilate's wife, has a dream about Jesus and is just agitated, troubled, and tells him, hey, be careful with how you respond to this. I've been suffering in a dream because of this Jesus guy. He's got his wife on the trampoline with him. He's got his own ambition. No one becomes a Roman governor without ambition, self-advancement, climbing the ladder, achievement, success. And then in this story, Jesus walks up and enters the trampoline. Truth is not just abstract ideals or facts that we say we believe. What you believe to be true is so much more personal. It's about who you find reliable, credible. It has a lot to do with relationship. We just got to be honest with it. That's how we work as humans. And so in John's gospel, when Jesus talks about truth, what he says in John 14:6, he gives this declaration. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Notice that he doesn't say, I will tell you about the truth. I will tell you certain things and you'll believe to be true, which he does. But he says, I am the truth. In John's gospel, truth is not just an abstract idea, it's a person. It's Jesus. So, truth walks up onto Pilate's trampoline. Let's see how he handles this. Picking it up in verse 39, he tells the Jews, I find no basis to charge against him, but it's your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews? They shouted back, no, not him. Give us Barabbas. Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. And they slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him. That's the second time he says that. When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, Here is the man. As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, Crucify, crucify. But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." It's the third time. The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." Now, this freaks Pilate out to hear this. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus, but Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him." "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. Jesus' official conviction, the charge against him, and it's repeated over and over in this account, is King of the Jews. The claim that Jesus was the Messiah. Messiah means anointed one. It's a Hebrew word. In Greek, it's Christ. It means the same thing. Messiah, Christ, anointed one. The kings of Israel, when they first would become king, the first thing that happened to them isn't that they would receive a crown on their heads. It's that the prophets would anoint them with oil. So the kings were called the anointed ones. And so there was this promise that from the line of David, God would raise up his own special anointed one for the people to be the king of the Jews. But for in this time, in Jesus' time, this claim to be king of the Jews, it was both religious and political. As the chief priests and religious leaders said to Pilate, "Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." There's immediately this conflict. To be king of the Jews. And Pilate, when he first hears this claim of Jesus, you can sense there's almost this doubt. Like, king of the Jews? Like, really? He's looking at Jesus, this poor man born seemingly from the other wrong part of the country. He's got this followers, and they've all scattered at this point. King of the Jews? The last person in history to claim this title, King of the Jews, was Herod the Great. He was the one in the Magi story, when Jesus was first born, and these wise men were looking to see the king. And Herod, he has a brutal act after that, killing innocents. That was Herod the Great. He claimed the title King of the Jews. So Pilate has that in his mind when this claim is set before this guy Jesus, King of the Jews. But the more he talks with Jesus, the more weight Jesus seems to have on his truth trampoline. To the point where he's kind of afraid. He's like, "Who are you?" He straight up says, "Where do you come from?" He senses there's something about this guy. This Roman governor who has all the power is afraid of this poor man Jesus dragged before him. "Who are you?" The King of the Jews. And you have to imagine Pilate weighing all of this. And even when he asks Jesus, and Jesus tells him, "My kingdom is not of this world. It comes from another place." And Pilate starting to think like, "Really? You have a kingdom beyond Roman Empire?" I just want to ask us this question. between the Roman Empire and Jesus' kingdom. One in Pilate's time seemed so small and pathetic, weak, falling apart, versus the strength of the Roman Empire. Which of those two kingdoms are alive and active today? Which of those faded into the history books? Pilate, his mind would have been blown to find out what things look like today. But in the moment, he had to discern this. He had all these competing truths. And it wasn't just him who had to decide, but the religious leaders, they have to decide about Jesus. All through John's gospel, people are interacting with Jesus, as they come and see who Jesus is, they're having to make a decision and weigh Jesus' words, who he is. And the Jewish leaders eventually come to the conclusion and declaration, their truth is that we have no king but Caesar. What really hurts and hits for these religious leaders is over and over we hear that this is the weekend of Passover. Passover, which celebrated the deliverance that God people freed them from bondage and slavery to Pharaoh of Egypt. The superpower of the time, the Caesar of the time, and the Passover, the Lord himself freed these people who weren't even a nation and helped them become a nation by delivering them. And that's what they celebrated in Passover. And it's on Passover, as they're celebrating this, that the Jewish leaders are saying, hey, we choose Pharaoh. We choose Caesar. And it gets so ironic that this Gentile, this one who belongs to Rome, Pilate, is the one who declares ultimately the truth about Jesus. The placard that is put on the top of anyone who's being crucified in the time, they would put the charge, what they're convicted of. And Pilate has written on Jesus' placard in 3 different languages, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. And it's written in Aramaic, and which is the language of the Jews, their home dialect, in Latin, which is the language of the empire, and in Greek, which is the general Mediterranean lingua franca, the language of culture. And it's as if to declare that Jesus' death, the cross he'd be dying on, is not just for him, not just for the Jewish people as the King of the Jews, but when he's lifted up from the earth, as it says in John, he will draw all people to himself. And that is declared in the placard that Pilate puts on Jesus. And the religious leaders, they have a fuss about it. They're like, don't write King of the Jews, write that he claimed to be King of the Jews. And the last words that Pilate says throughout history that we know of is, what I have written, I have written. Now, I don't know what's in Pilate's heart, and ultimately, Jesus was crucified under his governance. I can't be the judge, you can't be the judge of where Pilate sits, how it all worked out, him and God, I don't know. But you see in this moment in his life, this weighing of competing truths, where he has to answer that, what is truth? What does he believe to be true? What does he give most weight in his life? And that question's not just for Pilate, not just for the religious leaders, but it's for us. In your life, the different things that you value, that you believe in, the different people and relationships that have so much weight in your life, what is truth for you? How do you decide that? And I want us to be careful as we think through this. It's not just the truths that we proclaim and declare with our mouths, that we put on our social media tags or bumper stickers or whatever. It's not just what you say. Really, the truth, what reveals as the most weight in your life is embodied in you, how you live, your actions. So is Jesus in the way of Jesus? Does he have the most weight in your life? That's what I've been wrestling with this week as I've been going through this passage. If I were in Pilate's shoes, like really in his shoes, grown up the way he did, with all the influences, what would it be like for Jesus to walk onto my trampoline all of a sudden? Who would I give most weight to? Who would I listen to? But it's not just I have to put myself in Pilate's shoes. That's true of my own life. Jesus walked up and he's on my trampoline, and I'm constantly being asked, who has the most weight? Who do I give most credence to? And my prayer and my hope, what I'm trying to do, and my hope for you, is to give Jesus, who I believe is the embodiment of truth, is truth, the most weight in my life. Truth isn't abstract, it's personal, it's embodied, it's lived out. So we're invited to make a decision. Who are you choosing? Just in the daily actions of your life, how you treat people who are different than you, how you treat people who make you mad and annoy you, how you treat people who maybe are opposed to you and the things you believe. The way of Jesus has something to say about how we treat people. The way of Jesus has something to say about, I think, every aspect of our life. Maybe even putting snooze in the alarm clock. I don't know. I need to think through that. But I truly believe that when Jesus has the most weight on your life, it affects everything. I'm going to invite the worship band to come up. We'll sing a response song. And as they're coming up, I want to share with you what I believe the good news of this passage. A lot of this was kind of heavy, kind of self-evaluation, getting in Pilate's shoes. It's a tough account to dive into. But here's the good news in this. We read it earlier. Pastor Casey read it. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of, filled up with grace and truth. Then he says later in chapter 8, and you will know the truth, and the truth will, oh, you guys are good, set you free. The gospel, the good news, and I believe this, not just believe it, like I've experienced this. When Jesus has the most weight in your life, when you give him the most credence and credibility, when you come to trust him, and you can't know this until you experience it, but when you come to do that, there is a freedom that comes over you. The bondage, the things in your soul that hold you back, that keep you in shame, they fall down when Jesus becomes the greatest truth in your life. And you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So that's my prayer for all of us, that we would come to experience that. We're gonna, singing this response song, I'll invite you. You can either stand, you can sit, you can come to the altars to pray. However you need or want to respond to God, let's sing this song. And as we sing, let's consider this. Consider your own life. Who do you give the most weight to? So let me say this word of prayer, and then we'll sing. God, Jesus, thank you for your presence in our lives. I pray, Lord, that you would give us honest reflection, that you would give us courage to respond to you. And Lord, I pray that we would be able to experience your freedom as we come, as we ask you to show up in our lives. Lord, thank you for who you are. We love you. We give it all to you.